All right, everybody, welcome back to Sandy Bottom Homestead. I'm so glad you could come by and visit and hang out, and especially while we build out our drip system. So we're going to add on to our existing drip system. Everything else is about the same as the original job. The only difference is you've got to run water into the garden, and I'll show you that setup real quick. But other than that, we're going to go ahead and run it all the way through, and we're going to connect it. I got my parts here, into one side into this bed and then one into this bed. So we're making some additions. Just if you're wondering how to run it in, I actually took and made my own hose. So the black one here is the hose that goes in, and you just need to get a fitting to go in, and this all comes as one piece, and this is a filter that goes in, and then you just build it out. And then I ran it all the way underground. So it goes underground through here, comes over, and then comes out here, and then just keeps going on through. And you can see here how we have dug it out. So this is where the new portion will lay, and that is the old line that we are going to cut. I want to try and make this video less than 30 minutes, and my goal is much less than that. But this is a little bit of a process, and as we go through, I'll show you the different tools and parts we need. I'm not going to do a list right now just because it'll add a lot of extra time. Now the first thing we're going to need to do is cut this, and we have to get the water to divert from this as well as go to the other portion. So we're going to use this T-fitting, and you don't want to cut it here and here. You want to cut a chunk of it out probably about right here. So roughly here and here, because we're going to have to put this back in, and I don't know how difficult it's going to be, because I may have to dig out a little bit more. I'm really hoping I don't. But this is nerve-wracking to me because I don't want to cut my system. I like my system, but here we go. There's one. And two. Heating this hose up first makes it more pliable. So that will work into your favor to do that. Because once you do that, then you can slide these on easier. And these are actually really good. They don't really pop off, especially off this hose. There's one side. And then the other side. The only problem is it's hard to get it off once you get it on. And then you just need to run a hose down the trench here. It's pretty simple to put that in. I just ran the line there, and I have plenty of extra coming out because we're going to need more. And you always want to cut longer than short, because you can always take off hose, but you can't add it. Now, the deal is here, there's going to be some waste, and it's unfortunate, but that's just the nature of this. But I mean, I've been running the system for a year with everything underground's been going really well, and these black hoses, I use them for everything, which I'll get into in a minute. So it's worked out really good. But just know you're going to have a little bit of waste, and that's okay. But I like to save the scraps because we've got to cut little pieces for the beds and stuff like that, and we can reuse it. So the hose is laying in here, and this one's not as bad because I dug the trench pretty far out. So I mean, we can go anywhere in here, and we're just going to put another T in, and I'll show you how this goes in at this point. But we're going to put a T in here, and that way we can tee it off to each bed. Apologize, I didn't really talk you through it earlier, but what we'll do is we'll go ahead and cut it. So it looks like roughly, let's do a little bit of measuring, and these are just eyeball measurements. Let's go right here. So we'll cut it, and then this screws on, so you want it all the way up so you get the whole bib, and then you just slide it in. And this is where it being warm and just letting the sun warm. You could use a cup of warm, not boiling water, but you could do that, and then you just push that in. You got to do a little wiggling, and once that's in, then all you do is you just screw it down, and that locks it in place. Now you can see we have it in our spot. So this is where having little pieces of scraps will work, because we need to run a piece from here and then up and all that other stuff. Now, there's two ways to do this. One, you could do it before you put your bed in and run it up through the bed, and that's 100% okay. I already had these beds in place when I did it, so I ran them on the outside. And as I went through, I kind of like that, because if something happens and I need to fix at least that part, it's easy for me to, you know, it's accessible to me. If I need to add to it or anything like that, at least that one part right there will be very easy to get to. So I like to run mine on the outside of the bed. But it's up to you how you want to do it. Otherwise, I mean, I could even do it on this bed. I would just lift it up and then put it underneath, but I don't want to do that. I don't want it running up. I just want to have soil in the bed, and that's it. It is a little bit unsightly, but at the same time, like, it doesn't matter, because the groceries are what matters. You know what I'm saying? Now, we don't have soil in this bed, but I'm going to go ahead, since I don't know why I started on this one, but I'm going to run the hose up and then I'm going to cap it. And then when I go do the second part, I'll just continue onto the other side. But we've run our hose, and now we need to get it to go up. So we're going to get an elbow, but we're going to put our elbow like this. So once it goes on, we can now run the hose up the side of the bed. And then we're going to get another one and elbow it this way so that we can run the hose through the bed. All right, so we ran it up the bed, and I'll show you in a second, but then we've got to do a little bit of a gap just to create so we can hook our valve up. But as of right now, this is what we got. Got our T coming through with our elbow pointing up at a 90-degree angle, another piece coming up, and then we put our elbow here. And so what we'll do is we're gonna end up coming back and clamping this to the side. But for right now, we need to make a piece, because we've got to put our valve on there, and you can't just butt it up. So we've got to have a little gap stop in between. That's where the scrap hose comes in. So we're going to cut a piece so we can have the valve sitting roughly about right there, because the water is going to come out of the end of it, so you want the hose going the rest of the way. So we just need to figure out how much of this hose to cut. And I like to take it, get that sticker off. This is open and this is shut, so I want this to be pointing towards the bed. But we're gonna need roughly that much here, then a little gap, and then the rest going to the elbow. So we're gonna cut roughly that much off. And I think this will do the trick. Let's see. I'm gonna leave this in the sun so it can continue to warm up for the next section. So I'll open this up all the way. Put that on. Make sure that it's tight before you move on to anything else. And then this one actually doesn't tighten at all. It just kind of sits right on. And then you push it on. See, it's a little bit long. So let's see if I can get this off. It ain't made to come off. Doesn't really, they're not made to come off very well. So we're gonna cut it back a fair amount. And the reason why is because where that was sitting, we would be eliminating the first square foot of the garden. And we don't want to do that, right? So, and from this point on, I'm going to switch to the next bed, but this bed is empty. So all we're going to do is turn that off, and it should not allow any water to come in whatsoever. All right, so I got this part done, and we're ready to install it all the way across here. And what we need to do is we need to make our main, I don't know what to call it, but we're just gonna call it the main water line for the bed. And it's basically the same line as this that stretches all the way across. So I'm gonna try and find a piece of scrap. Let's see, my beds are 4 feet across. This looks like it's about right. Look at that. So we're gonna do this and put this in. And then when I come back, I'll show you how to cap it and get the drip line installed onto it. Whew, boy, I tell you what, for fall, it sure is warm here. There ain't a breath of wind. But we got that piece on. Now there's two ways to cap this, okay? And this is really, really important. Please don't mess this up. So we've got, getting my bag of tricks here. We've got an end cap. So this simply goes on, nothing can come out. And this is nice because you can screw this off and then flush the system, which we're gonna wanna do afterwards, because invariably we definitely got some dirt in here while we were mixing it, putting it all together. So you can use that, but on every system that you build, and you have to remember, this whole area here is one system, and then I have another system over there which runs independently in the wild garden. And so for this, you want this right here. And this one, damn, it purges. So what happens is when it fills up, then it gets pressurized, it blocks, but when the pressure comes off, this opens up and allows it to drain. And this keeps the algae from building up in your system. But I already have one on this whole system, but since it's so big now, I'm gonna go ahead and add another one in just to be safe. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this in on this side, and you can still take this cap off and flush the system. But I'm gonna go ahead and add this in just to be safe, because I wanna make sure that nothing builds up, because invariably what'll happen is the algae will build up and then it can block your emitters, and you don't know what's going on. Before we go through and we start to put in the drip line, we wanna secure this to the bed, because we don't want it to flop around, because we really wanna lay our lines at the appropriate interval. And we're gonna use, I have these little half clamps here. These are 1/2 inch clamps, and they just basically slide over the hose and then you screw them in. It doesn't really matter where you put it. The one thing you wanna make sure is this is seated pretty low. It doesn't have to be like directly flush with the bed, but you want it seated pretty low. And I will just come through, move it over a little bit, and then screw it in like that. And this isn't an exterior grade clamp, but because it doesn't constantly stay wet, I haven't had an issue yet, but I am using exterior grade screws. So just keep that in mind. It is a lot cheaper, and I've had the other ones up for a year and haven't had a big issue with it. But you're just gonna go through, line everything up. We want it as close to the edge as possible, and then just drive that screw right in. Now you have the line secured. You can spin it a little bit, whatever. Make sure that it's on there nice and good, and we can start putting in our drip lines. There's a couple of different things for the drip line. You can get 1 foot spacing emitters or 6 inch spacing emitters. I opted for 1 foot for the simple fact that if you do 6 inch spacers or 6 inch emitters, then you're gonna put a lot more demand on your water pressure. And because I have to run my water all the way from my house via hose, I planned one day to actually put in an actual faucet back here, like direct water, so I get a lot more pressure. I opted to go for 1 foot. And in the future, if I do that, I can very easily change out all of the drip lines themselves. But other than that, I use 1 foot spacing emitters, and that just means every foot there's an emitter for water. And if you're doing square foot gardening, it works out pretty good. The way that it works is when the water comes up out of it, and this is how I look at it, and so far this year I've seemed to be pretty correct. I always try to plant on top of the emitter, but there's clearly some vegetables that you don't put every foot. So in the middle, that water will saturate that ground around it, and it'll eventually get it all nice and wet. And that's why you run these drip systems a lot longer than you would a sprinkler. But it'll end up saturating all of that. And the water, if you can just imagine in your head, that it'll connect. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it, and it's worked out pretty good thus far. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead, I'm just gonna cut the drip line. It comes on a big roll, and I'm just gonna use scissors, but to try and shorten the video, I'm gonna do that. And then we're gonna install it on here, and then we're gonna test the pressure. So when we go to put these drip lines in, you're gonna need this hole punch, and get the quality one. Don't cheap out on this. This one works great. They don't get flimsy and fall apart. And I mean, you're only using it a couple times, but this is, because you're gonna end up doing this more and more. So just go ahead and get you a good quality one. And what we wanna do is we're gonna space them about a square foot apart. So my bed is 4 feet long. So I need 4 lines running, you know, with a distance about equal in between. And so luckily my foot is just about a foot. So we can do, you want to do about 6 inches off the front. So we'll do one here. And you're going to take your hole punch and put it so the puncher is on the outside. And we're just going to make sure that it points in the correct direction. And then easily punch it. And you can see we've got a nice hole right there. And then you're going to take your fitting. So just push it in. And you may have to pinch the sides. And you hear it click. That means it is in there like swimwear. And so you can push it a little bit. And then we're going to take our drip line. And you just open it up. And it goes on just like every other one. Slide it on. And then thread the cap on. Clearly at this point, we cannot just have it wide open, so we're gonna need to cap it. And these seem like they're a little tricky, but they're actually a lot easier than they were. They threw me for a loop at first, but I'll show you how it goes on. Pull. And you don't wanna be super tight. You know, you wanna have a little bit of play in the line, because as you put soil on it and stuff, what I've learned over the past year is this will go down, and you don't wanna put a lot of pressure on this, because it'll end up leaking. Clearly I have about 2 feet extra on the bed, which is okay. And you can see, and you can also feel the emitters on it. So if you see that right there, you don't want to cut this right up next to it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut just behind this emitter and eliminate this emitter. Actually, I'm gonna go a little bit farther back. Let's say right here. And then you've got on this cap, you've got the end, and you got the big end and a thin end. And so it actually goes, I would think, you would look at it and think it goes this way, but the thin end actually goes in. And so what we're gonna do is you're gonna thread this in, or push it in, excuse me. Push it up, and then you're gonna fold it. And you don't have to do crazy folds. I like the number 3, because I'm weird. And so push it in and slide it. And then that locks it into place, and it will not come off. It seems like it's pretty flimsy, but once this inflates, it really does lock it right in. So off camera, I'm gonna go ahead and do the rest of the bed, and then we'll test everything. All right, you ready? Let's see how we are with leaks. So I got it pressurized, but I don't have any water going to the bed now. I've got that valve off, and I just wanna walk all of my connections that I just did and double check to make sure that there's no leakage anywhere there. So we'll start in the beginning, and then we'll just walk our way around. So the system's pressurized. I don't see any leaks here, which is good, because I actually did cut this one a little bit short, but it seems to be holding just fine. And then as long as you didn't nick the hose, you're good there. Nothing here. This is actually pressurized. See? So actually this will work to flush it. So we can flush it real quick. Plenty of water coming out. And then no leaks here. All right, moment of truth. There you go. And so it'll fill up and it'll do its thing. And it kind of sounds like a jet engine coming off as it pushes the air out. Here we go. See that leak? So let's fix that. And all this is simply, this isn't seated tight, which happens more than you would think, even after you have your system accounted for. And there you go. She is spitting out water. All in all, it's not that bad. Now there is one thing that must happen after you finish this. You gotta have a celebratory drink, right? So let's do it. Nothing better than a good cold seltzer water. So we'll take that, and then the other side we'll be able to do. No issues there. We just have to wait to get soil in because I don't really want stuff dangling. But there's a couple things to remember. One, this system is a 3/8 system, I believe. And sometimes they measure them by outside diameter or inside, but it's 3/8. And I got it from Drip Depot. And one cool but stupid thing about Drip Depot is they send you Tootsie Roll Pops in your packages, which at first I was like, why the hell are you sending me Tootsie Roll Pops? And then I started thinking about it, I was like, it's because I'm fitting to get mad and I'm gonna need some sugar. But you know, that little 2-cent gift really goes a long way. So, but seriously, if you call them, they will walk you through, if you're worried about your water pressure, how much water pressure you have, how much your system can handle, stuff like that. Don't make any crazy curves or anything, just think right angles all day long. And just know that your initial, depending on how big your garden is, your initial install may be a little bit of a headache, but all you gotta do is build a light trench and then just kind of go from there. It's not a big deal. Another thing is you want to make sure that you plan it out well. So just know what you're doing and then just take your time and go through it. It's really not that bad. And it's made a big difference in my garden this year, I think. Definitely has made me feel better. And I'm probably gonna do another video really soon about my initial thoughts after a year of using a drip system and kind of what I was thinking about before. But so far I like it. So really hope this helped you. This is kind of a complicated video to make, just, you know, me trying to work and do everything. So if you like it, give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below if you've got any questions, or especially if you do or don't use a drip system. I'd be curious to know. Let us know what you think. And yeah, until next time, everybody, continue to grow.
Goodbye.